You might be surprised to hear that there have been over 20,000 earthquakes in Yellowstone National Park since the mid-1800s, but this number doesn't even account for all of the secret eruptions that have occurred at this supervolcano. It's estimated that there have actually been 75 minor eruptions that went unnoticed and were never recorded. But what if we told you that some of these undiscovered events were huge? Some could have rivaled the eruption of Mount St. Helens, and although they happened hundreds of years ago, their impact could be felt today. How do scientists know about these secret eruptions? What made them go unnoticed? And most importantly, does this mean that a major event is overdue? The largest volcanic eruption in the history of North America was the Yellowstone supereruption 640,000 years ago. This single event deposited more ash in the atmosphere than all other volcanoes on Earth in the last 10,000 years combined. There is so much evidence of this eruption that it can be found in layers of sediment across the United States. But the reason why we know about this particular event and others before it are because of the preserved evidence left behind after each blast. Scientists call these preserved pieces of evidence Tephra. Now you may be asking yourself, what is Tephra? Well, think of it as broken down rock fragments, glass shards, pumice, ash, crystals, cinders, pumice, and anything else you can imagine coming out of a volcano. These pieces of evidence can travel great distances and accumulate in layers on the ground. They are the key to unlocking the secrets of ancient eruptions. And by studying them, scientists have been able to piece together the history of Yellowstone. But even though scientists can determine when a supereruption has occurred, it's extremely difficult to figure out if smaller eruptions have taken place in between. This is because the evidence left behind isn't always easy to spot. Sometimes the Tephra layer is only a few millimeters thick, which makes it really hard to identify, especially considering that the layers are often eroded away by wind and water over time. To make matters worse, the majority of the park is covered by forests, which means that trees quickly grow over any signs of an eruption, so unless you know exactly where to look, it would be very easy to walk right by an area that experienced a volcanic eruption. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. So how did scientists discover that there have been over 20,000 earthquakes at Yellowstone since the mid-1800s? Well, the answer is simple. They didn't. Most of these quakes were actually recorded by local Native American tribes. Between 1850 and 1885, there were 1,980 earthquakes that were recorded by U.S. Geological Survey seismographs. But scientists believe that there were many more that were too weak to be detected by humans or machines. In fact, there's been an average of 1,500 earthquakes every year since 1850, with the strongest one being a 7.3 magnitude quake in 1985. The good news is that none of these quakes caused any damage or injuries. The bad news is that most of them are too small to be felt by humans. But don't worry, this is normal for Yellowstone and there's no need to panic. Now let's get back to those 75 secret eruptions. Scientists recently discovered evidence of these eruptions by drilling into the bottom of the lake. With each layer of sediment that they drilled through, they were able to learn more about the history of Yellowstone. They found that in some areas there were 10 times more layers of tephra than there were historic records of eruptions. This means that for every one volcanic eruption that was recorded, there were actually 10 that went unnoticed. But just because these eruptions were small doesn't mean they weren't important. By studying them, scientists are able to better understand how magma moves through the crust, how magma chambers are formed, and whether or not there is enough magma in the system to cause a supereruption. One of the most exciting discoveries came when researchers analyzed the chemical makeup of the tephra layers. They found that some of the samples contained crystals that had never been seen before. One of these crystals was called sanidine, which is only produced during high-temperature eruptions. This discovery suggests that magma from deep within the Earth is regularly rising up to the surface. If this continues to happen, it could eventually lead to a massive eruption. But don't worry, scientists are closely monitoring the situation and will let us know if anything changes. Some of the other undeclared eruptions were so small that they were barely noticeable. For example, one eruption released less than 10 cubic feet of material, which is equivalent to 2 school buses. Even if something like this happened today, it would be very unlikely that anyone would notice. So it's understandable why these events went unnoticed for so long. However, some of the eruptions were much larger than others. In fact, one eruption was so powerful that it released about 10 billion cubic feet of material. That's equivalent to 2 million school buses. It's amazing to think that something so big could go unnoticed, but it really shows how difficult it is to track all of the activity at Yellowstone. There have also been smaller eruptions that have caused large craters. One such eruption was known as the Lava Creek eruption, which occurred near the Upper Geyser Basin and created a crater that is now home to the Great Fountain Paint Pot. While the initial eruption was quite small, it led to a series of explosions that created several craters in the area. Over time, these craters filled with water and created the beautiful landscape that we see today. Visitors to the park can still see evidence of this eruption, such as the Norris Geyser Basin, which is filled with colorful hot springs. It's a reminder of the powerful forces that shaped the park and continue to do so today. As you can probably tell, pinpointing the exact number of undeclared eruptions at Yellowstone is quite difficult. Scientists are still working on gathering data and analyzing samples from the lakebed. They're excited to see what other secrets Yellowstone is hiding and hope to learn more about the history of the park. In the meantime, we can marvel at the beauty of Yellowstone and the amazing discoveries that scientists are making. But here's the thing. Understanding why some of these events go unnoticed can help us better predict future ones. Just imagine if we had been able to predict the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Hundreds of lives could have been saved. In the case of Yellowstone, there is a lot of debate about whether or not a major eruption is overdue. Some experts say that we are in for a super eruption soon, while others say that we have nothing to worry about. The reality is that nobody knows what's going to happen. However, by learning more about the history of Yellowstone, we can increase our chances of being prepared for whatever comes our way. One of the best ways to do this is to support organizations that are doing research on the volcano. By donating money to these organizations, we can help them develop new technologies and methods for detecting changes in the behavior of the volcano. We can also stay up to date on the latest findings by following scientists on social media or subscribing to their newsletters. In addition, we can keep an eye out for any unusual activity in the park ourselves. If we see anything that looks out of the ordinary, we can report it to the authorities so they can investigate further. In the end, it's up to each individual person to decide how much they want to worry about the future of Yellowstone. But one thing is for sure, if we take the time to learn more about the volcano and its history, we will be better prepared for whatever the future may hold. Now here's a question for you. What do you think? Is it possible for a volcano to go from quiet to erupting in a matter of days, weeks, or months? Or do you think that there are always signs that tell us what's coming? Let us know your thoughts below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more amazing stories about volcanoes. Thank you for watching.